All right, so welcome back to the Team O'Neill Rally School. What we wanted to do today is just a quick video for you guys looking at getting into racing.
Right.
Do you rent a car? Do you buy a car? Do you build a car? Building a car.
Right. So there's not two mindsets, but there's one end of the spectrum, the other end of the spectrum for building a car, right? You can get into your brand new cars, brand new builds, brand new STIs, brand new Fiestas, kit R5s, kit R2s, that kind of stuff. Where I started was, like we were saying, you have to be kind of mechanically inclined, right? And I wanted to become that mechanically inclined. I had never really in-depth worked on cars before starting mine. So what I had done is I bought a nice old E30 BMW, took it apart, learned where everything goes, cleaned it out. I put a new motor in it, I put this in it, and I started racing it before it was logbooked and caged in rallycross and hill climbs and all that kind of stuff, so I could get some experience with the car and myself driving. And after a couple of years of gathering parts and gathering, perfecting the car in some sorts of ways, I handed it off to somebody to put a cage into it that knows how to weld, that knows how to bend tube to make a safe cage. And I had all that other, belts and seats and all the other safety stuff ready to go that year. So I could race the car while I was building it and then just hand it off for a month. It gets built, we put all the stuff in, get it log booked, and now I can go actually rallying. And I didn't really have a lot of downtime on the car. But as you're saying, low expectations, you build it. How well do you think you can build a rally car, right? So mine works pretty well. It's exactly how I expected it though. Totally pretty stock car, pretty stock suspension, so I don't expect to, be challenging the guys on the top of the podium there on the, national level, but, rallying's rallying, whether you're in $1 million car or a $5,000 car, right?
We're on the same roads.
We're on the same roads.
That's the cool part for sure.
Yeah, so this is actually perfect because we've got kind of the budget do it yourself, and then we'll move on to you in a second. But starting out, you can take any car that you've got in the driveway and go do an SCCA rallycross with it.
Yeah.
See how you like it, see how that all goes, put a skid plate on it, get going, and then at some point you decide, put a roll cage in,
Right.
have somebody who knows how to weld that's an expert, who's done it before, do that.
Yeah, a cage builder. And the thing that over there, if you can think about it, is you don't have to spend that big $10,000 all at once, and then you put all this money right in. You can get them through it, and life changes or something. You can put it on hold, or you can, it's spending more incrementally.
Yeah.
Right, and it's where I met everybody, right, rallycrossing and doing the small things. I met people and, just networked and everything. I learned how it all works before I went out and did it. So that's kind of an added benefit there.
Yeah, and it's the same probably if you're into, autocrossing and getting out on the track, you're going to meet a lot of like-minded individuals with a lot of the same sort of ambitions and different talents where maybe you're pretty mechanically inclined, but someone else is really good at wiring or welding or some other thing, or marketing and team management and some of the other stuff. And you can build a little circle around yourself. So it's not really just rally and rallycross. It could be autocross and track days or whatever, ice racing or different off-road events you might be into. Let's say I had a bit more of a budget and I didn't have as much time, and I wanted to build a thing to go out and try and get trophies with.
Yes. Yeah, and that's, a majority of our clients on the motorsport business, because we do want to support the grassroots guy and give him all the advice that we can. But the reality is that doesn't pay the bills of big infrastructure. So, whenever we work with a client, it's time is the variable. So, we can provide the crew, the co-driver, all the logistics and be able to get somebody on stage. But you have to have the budget to do that. So if you're looking at two-wheel drive, the R2 is the R2T actually is kind of where people are at now. That's a $115,000 car, and that's to be at the top of the two-wheel drive class. Now the R5 is here for four-wheel drive. It was $1 million to be competitive at the very top end of four-wheel drive, but now it's not that it's cheap, but $300,000, $400,000 to be competitive at the top of four-wheel drive. So the R5 has brought that price point down, but it's a skill set to be able to drive that car. It's a fairly easy car to drive in the overall arching world of racing, but it's definitely a beast.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a different program. If you're out there to have fun and learn a lot and go do events, build yourself or get into that field. But I think to win and to really be competitive, at the top of the game, the way it is, right now in America, yeah, it's pretty complex stuff. I mean, we're running sequential transmissions. Riger suspension is basically, or Öhlins or an equivalent is kind of a requisite if you're going to be driving that fast on those roads. And another thing, when you build a rally car, the joke sort of is that, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Because if you buy suspension, you got to have spares in the trailer. And what if you put in a sequential transmission? You better have spare axles and a spare trans and a spare clutch. So how does that all work?
Yeah, and that's a big variable, and that's why a lot of people like Team O'Neill, is because we have 2 or 3 cars usually, so we can have a shared, pool of parts. But yeah, I mean, you could double your investment even, potentially having enough spare parts. And so you got to also think about, if an engine fails, you probably can't change it in service, so it's not necessarily something you need to have a spare of in the trailer. But it's one of those things that, we've kind of figured all those things out. But racing at something like Dan's level, you get to the junkyards, you find friends with parts, you can find a car with someone else has a piece, and at the top level, R5, these are machine components and things that you can't find in a junkyard for the most part. So you kind of have to have even more spares on available for a car at that level, whereas something more stock is easier to find. And that's even Tim O'Neill and I have had this conversation. Even Rally, when he was rallying 10-15 years ago, the exponential growth in complicated cars is kind of sad. It's something that we've walked so far away from stock rally and into these monster cars, but it's just the way the sport is, and I think it's something that it is a good thing. But rally is definitely different today than it was back then.
Something for build or buy is be sure the car is like a viable platform, right? You have some weird car that's old, or it's like they sold 10 of them in the US or something. It might not be something you want to get into, right? If you go and build a Subaru or buy a Subaru, there's going to be Subarus there with spare parts that you could barter with people to get if you need them or whatever. Tons of Fiestas, tons of old Golfs, tons of all that stuff, right? So it might not be a good thing to be unique, right? You might need to bring all those spares, even if you have a very cheap car. If nobody else has a car like yours, you're kind of on your own for that regard.
Yeah, if you're used to track events or drag racing or drifting or whatever background you might come from, if you're thinking about rallying, you can go spectate a rally, you can work a rally, but you can definitely just go on, American Rally Association's website and look at the entry list and look at the cars that are running, because it's probably very different than what you might be used to. There's no Miatas, there's no 240s, there's a couple, but it's going to be the Subaru Imprezas of different flavors, the Ford Fiestas, a handful of Volkswagens,
some Beamers,
Evos, BMWs.
Yeah.
And right there, you've probably got 90% of the field.
Yeah.
So if you do choose, some old thing,
first gen Chevy Cavalier or some
stupid
thing.
RX-7, you're going to have a good time rotary, but you're going to be the only one there probably.
Yeah.
And if you need, do they have spark plugs? A spark plug?
At least one.
I think it is at least one, probably 9 spark plugs. Who knows how rotaries work? Nobody's going to have one. Or what happens often is, if you tip a car over or you get into a crash or something, you might need a windshield. So when you have a spares package, when Chris and the team roll out to a rally, they've got transmissions, axles, windshields, body panels, everything basically to tear that car back down and put it all back together. Suspension down to brake pads, brake calipers, brake lines. Every system is redundant in pieces in the trailer.
Unless you damage the roll cage, we can effectively get you back on stage.
Right. Yes, unless the roll cage physically deforms because you hit something so hard and tech won't let you back out racing again.
Yeah. Yeah, what kind of car can you support really? Because you can buy a car, but can you run it? It costs money to go to events, it costs money to change parts out. you know, you might go through axles or motors or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you, what we like to say is, what can you effectively burn down right now and not be upset about it? Well, upset about it, but not
Yeah.
get in the water without it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, you know, for realistically, like, let's talk numbers. So if you're a low-end rally guy, it's still, what realistic budget did you have to build and get on your first stage? Do you remember?
I think I calculated it once to get on the stage the first. I mean, because there's lots of extra stuff that I did and then I didn't like, and I changed and I sold again or whatever. So it's up and down. But you know, I'm probably doing my own work and untold amount of hours into it, right? Because you got to think about your time too. I probably put $7,000 into the car,
Okay.
and it's fairly stock. You know, I bought it for $700 originally and put all this stuff in it. So, I mean, you can buy a car for that much, but then you have all the spares and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
and then you know it works all the way up through older Subarus or Evos or whatever. You get up into the $15,000-$20,000 range, right? And you go all the way up to.
And what was
brand new
do
stuff.
you remember what your first stage actually cost when you ran, like the actual running cost
First
of the
event?
first event?
So, I mean, you can do sprints too, right? So sprints are pretty cheap. They're, you know, $200 to enter, and you still need to have all that stuff, trailer, truck, or borrow that kind of stuff from people. So that, you know, a sprint, maybe I'd estimate maybe $500 running it yourself. You know, maybe bringing a crew guy, maybe not, just doing it yourself. And then my first big stage rally, or any kind of stage rally that I go to, I kind of budget here in about $2,000 to do it, you know, with the 800 or so entry fee, some hotel or, you know, Airbnb kind of thing, and then food and gas to get there and gas to do it, and whatever prep you have to do beforehand, kind of not even included in that, to making sure you have tires that work for it or your tires spent. So like your running costs for a cheaper car might be, or you know, it's kind of how fast do you want to spend. You know, my car costs a lot less to run, that $2,000, maybe even a little less to go to a full stage rally.
Yeah.
Whereas
I think I was in the middle. I was around 5 or 6, but I was running, you know, new fresh tires and race gas sometimes and some of the other stuff.
And our clients are usually, you know, we're trying to help our clients be at the top. So we're usually 20,000 plus an event, you know, because we're full trailer parts and, you know, multiple crews, air flight and
Meals.
a manager and all the hotels and hospitality and So
Yeah, that's if you want to show up and go to a rally the best way you possibly can in America, you know, call him.
Right.
And
it's about what do you want to do when you get there, right? We have crew that are there ready to help you. Like last year I went off to SDPR with just me and my co-driver. You know, some friends helped that were there, but you know, they weren't dedicated to us or anything. So thankfully didn't need to do anything on the car, but if we needed to do stuff on the car, it was just up to us, right? So we're racing all day. We're racing through a whole loop of stages and we have a 20-minute service. And then we have to like munch food and work in the car and check everything out while we're getting ready in that 20 minutes, right, where we could have somebody else, you know, help you out with that. So it's how much work do you want to do when you get there?
Or do you want to go, you know, have some grilled shrimp or whatever else you guys are
well, you
cooking
said
while
the team
5
managers
mechanics rebuild your car?
Yeah, exactly. Teach their own, but and I think that's the cool thing about rallies. We can all still be on the same playing field and have that. And you know, I've seen the top end guys like our teams. Our driver is typically gone by the time Dan shows up, so we can sometimes help go over and help the smaller guy. And that's why buying a Fiesta is kind of a good thing, because then if you have a Fiesta, we've got Fiestas. Our guys are already kind of up to speed. So if you have an issue, it's easier for us to help. But we always try to help.
Yeah, I mean, when we go, we have 3 or 4 guys for 3 or 4 cars, right? We're all friends, we all go together as a group, and one car shows up, 10 minutes later another car shows up. As long as that one's fine, they'll work on this one now and just triage it, right? But it's not as effective, obviously. And then you're driving to knowing that.
Yeah,
you're not driving as hard as you could be.
Yeah, so I mean, just sort of a quick recap, I guess. Renting cars, kind of be careful where you rent them from, because the low end you probably want to avoid, and the high end might have some hidden costs. Building cars and buying cars.
Kind of one and the same. You know, how much work do you want to put into it? Building a car, lots of work or lots of extra money to have someone build it. Buying a car, it's already set up, hopefully, and you know, you have a big range for both of building expensive cars, building, you know, not so expensive cars and stuff in the middle.
Everything
Yeah.
goes back to what's your goal? What is your ultimate goal? If you want to get on stage, you can get on stage a few $1,000s. If
Yeah.
you want to get on stage and be a champion, it's going to be exponentially more expensive.
Right, and it's about how long do you want this stuff to go out, right? I was rallycrossing for 2.5 years before I even thought about getting onto stage and being that way. And you can expedite that by maybe going to rally school or learning, because I had to learn everything on my own and learn how to drive on my own, well, to feel I was comfortable going out on stage. But you have all these things at your disposal to go to school and then have a car built. And
that's funny, and it kind of leads into Tim O'Neill himself. He was like Dan, had a shop, he was a mechanic, he built his first car, he went rally racing for over 2 decades, and then he really wanted to give people his experience in a short timeline, and that's what he built the 5-day school to be. So
Yeah.
he was a grassroots driver. He became supported by Air Force and became a top-end factory driver for a year. And so he's seen both ends, and he's always been passionate about helping the small guy. And that's what the 5-day school is actually built for. And 90% of our customers don't ever actually go rallying, but we still have built the 5-day school to be for that 10% that actually want to go and race.
Yeah, it just goes back to what your goals are. If you want to try rallying, if you're out on the track and you say, oh, I saw, some of this rally stuff and it looks great, it might make the most sense to come here. Not to shamelessly plug ourselves, but, in the course of a week, you will do more driving than you would in a couple of rallies. And damages are basically paid for. You're driving our car.
The only insurance in the U.S. for rally.
Yeah, it's the only way to do it.
Yeah,
You
red
can wreck
bars,
something
red
without
bars.
paying for it. So that's good. And there's a reason why, how many rally champions, if your goals are to win.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've trained with Ken and Travis before they started, and we've got 7 two-wheel drive champions that have been through here, and we've been around for 21 years, and Tim, a 5-time champion himself, built the curriculum, so there's a lot of reasons why Team O'Neill is the only option if you actually want to become a good rally driver.
For sure.
sweet.
I've been Wyatt.
I've been Dan.
I'm Chris.
Go rallying.
Go rally. We'll see you out there.